Welcome to the step-by-step guide on how to fill out Form 20467B, Sample Site Selection Pool and Materials Survey for Non-Transient Non-Community Water Systems. This guide will provide instructions on adding new lead and copper sample sites or updating your existing sites. We'll also discuss how to inactivate sites that are no longer viable sampling locations. There are two versions of this form. Version A is intended for community water systems, and version B is intended for non-transient, non-community water systems. You can find both versions of the form on the TCEQ Lead and Copper webpage shown at the bottom of this slide. This video provides instructions for version B. If you're filling out the form for a community water system, then you'll need the video for version A, which can also be found on the TCEQ Lead and Copper webpage. This page provides an overview of what will be covered in the video. First, we'll discuss why this form is required, and then we'll cover the specific requirements for each page of the form separately. Last, we have information on where you can go to find additional assistance if needed. The video has been broken into chapters so that you can easily locate the information you need. Hover your mouse over the video and then click the section on the seek bar that corresponds to the section you need assistance with in order to be brought to that segment of the video. The lead and copper rule requires that systems sample at locations that are more susceptible to high lead or copper concentrations. A tiering system was created to prioritize the use of higher-risk sample sites. TCEQ uses Form 20467 to identify which tiers your sample sites fall into. All sites where lead and copper tap samples are collected must be selected from a pool of targeted sampling sites identified through the materials survey and approved by TCEQ prior to sampling. Even if your system does not have any lead or copper pipes in the distribution system, you're still required to fill out the form so that the sites can be identified as low risk. Pages 3 and 4 of the form provide additional guidance regarding this monitoring requirement and guidelines for prioritizing higher risk sites. Page 1 of the form contains two sections. In the top section, you'll input the contact information for your system and the current population. For the contact information, it's best to choose an individual who can make corrections to the form so that the lead and copper team can reach out if any revisions are needed. In the bottom section, titled Sample Site Categories, you'll specify how many sites of each tier you'll be adding. For example, if you're adding 2 Tier 1 sites and 1 Tier Other site, you would write a 2 and a 1 in the rightmost columns as shown. Then write the sum of all sites on the bottommost line that says total number of sites. If you're adding Tier Other sites, you'll also need to provide a short explanation of why the sites do not qualify as a numbered tier, as shown in the bottommost field in the middle column. To determine the correct tier that your site falls into, read the descriptions provided in the middle column. We've also provided a flowchart on the next slide that you may find helpful. And there's also additional guidance on pages 3 and 4 of the form that provide further detail regarding monitoring requirements and guidelines for prioritizing higher risk sites. Follow the questions on this flowchart to find the tier that your site falls into. For example, if you have a site that has copper pipes with lead solder built in 1984, it would be a Tier 1 site. If you're having trouble reading the text on this slide, you can expand the video into full screen mode by clicking the full screen icon at the bottommost right of this video. Page 2 of the form is where you'll write the address, tier information, and plumbing information for each of your sites. The first column provides a numbered list. The total number of sites added on this page should match the sum listed at the bottom of page 1. The location address column is where you'll provide the street address for each site. You do not need to include the city, state, or zip code here. In the Tier 1, 2, Other column, you'll write what tier the site falls into. The flowchart on the previous slide can help you determine tier information. In the Served by a Lead Service Line column, you'll indicate if the utility side of the line is a lead service line. If you don't have this information, you can write unknown. This is the only column where writing unknown is acceptable. In the Type of Plumbing Material column, you'll write in the plumbing material for the resident side of the line. Page 5 of the form contains a list of acceptable methods for obtaining this information. In the Date of Construction column, you'll write the year that the structure was constructed. After you've completed this information for all of your sites, sign your name at the bottom of the page to certify that the sites you've chosen are representative of your distribution system and target areas that are higher risk for lead and copper in the water. If you need to add more than 20 sites, you can duplicate this page and add as many additional sites as needed. Once completed, page 2 should look similar to this. All fields must be filled in with the relevant information. Only the Served by a Lead Service Line, Why, or In, or Unknown field can contain an answer of unknown. None of the fields can be left blank. Pages 3 and 4 of the form provide instructions and guidelines for selecting the appropriate tiers for your sites. Page 3 has 2 sections. The top section provides instructions on choosing appropriate sampling sites and highlights the importance of finding sites within your distribution system that are the highest risk for lead and copper. The bottom section of the page provides a table that shows how many sample sites your system is required to sample at during each monitoring period based on the population. It is important to note your sampling pool should include all identified sites at least equal to the number of sites your system is required to sample during standard or initial monitoring. Although the number in the table is the minimum number required, you can add as many additional sites as you would like. This practice may be useful in case any of your sites are no longer viable sampling locations in the future monitoring period. Page 4 provides a list of additional guidelines that can be used to answer any remaining questions you may have that were not covered in the standard instructions. It may answer questions you have about how to choose a tier for sites with extenuating circumstances, such as what to do if your sites have goosenecks, pigtails, or what to do if your site has a water softener. Page 5 of the form is the material survey. On this page, you'll check off which options you used to evaluate the plumbing materials of your sites to determine their tiers. At least one option from each of the 3 sections needs to be checked off. If the corrosivity characteristics section does not apply to your system, you can write "not applicable" with a short explanation in the Other Sources Explain section. Although some of the sections ask you to provide maps, this is not a requirement, and the form will still be accepted without the inclusion of maps. Once you've completed the form, you can mail it to the address at the bottom of page 5, or you can email it to pwslcr tceq.texas.gov. If you send the form to the email address, you'll receive a confirmation email once the form has been reviewed and accepted that includes a list of your updated sample sites. You may need to update sites you've historically used to include missing tier information. To do this, you'll fill the form out exactly as you would to add a new site, as instructed earlier in the video. Sites cannot be updated to a different address unless there's been a 911 address change. This is because once a sample site ID has been assigned to an address, data for that location is tied to that ID. You may also want to inactivate sites that are no longer viable sampling locations. Examples of why you'd want to inactivate a site may include that the building has been demolished or the resident has installed a water softener. If the site could possibly be a viable sampling location in the future, there is no need to inactivate it. For example, if the current resident no longer wants to participate in sampling, but a future resident may, you can leave the site as active. There is no limit to the number of sites you can have as active, and approval of sites does not expire, so there is no disadvantage to leaving the site as active. To inactivate a site, you'll include pages 1 and 2 of the form. On page 1, you'll only need to complete the contact information section. On page 2, write the address of the site you'd like to inactivate, and then a short explanation of the reason, as shown on the slide. This concludes our video on adding and updating lead and copper sample sites using Form 20467B. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the Lead and Copper Monitoring Team at the following contact information.